Hello, and welcome to our 69th step in our walking tour through the Bible. I'm Father Alexander, this is St. Peter's in Hove, and we're going to look at Judges 14. If you just one chapter, you might just like to have a little read of that. It's not very long, it's only 20 verses. It's rather a lot in it. Okay, put me on hold and read it. Okay. Samson has now grown up, and it's not a pretty sight. If you want to imagine what Samson looks like, remember a razor has never touched his head. So his hair is long, unkempt and bedraggled, and of course his beard is unkempt, long and bedraggled. So he looks like, I suppose, a hipster, or he looks like one of those 1960s, 70s hippies that we're used to, seeing only in photographs, luckily. So Samson has grown up. Let's say he's about 18 because he's still unmarried, and he says he goes down to Timnah, a Philistine place, and he sees a girl he likes the look of. He comes back home, and so what's he do? He says to his father, I noticed a woman, a Philistine girl, so now get her for me to be my wife. What? They say. Can't you find an Israelite wife? Can't you find somebody from your own clan or your own nation? Do you have to go and find a wife among the uncircumcised Philistines, people who are not like us, people who are our enemy? And he just says, get her for me, get her for me. She's the one I like. He says, she's the one I'm fond of in the Jerusalem Bible. I think actually it's really much more basic that she's the one I desire. He's seen her, he wants her, he tells his parents, you must get her for me. Samson is an undisciplined teenager, selfish teenager. He's a nightmare. I think everybody, well, I don't know if everybody, some people have lovely teenage children, I'm sure, but most people have come across the experience of having a teenager who wants something and won't shut up till they've got it. I know what I'm talking about here because I was a teenager myself. I remember how badly I wanted a rally chopper. That's a type of bicycle. And I went on at my parents' until I got it. Then as soon as I got it, well, of course, you know what happened then. I didn't want it anymore. Right. But we've got to rein in our desires, but not Samson. His desires are law. So what do the parents do? They cave in, they collapse, and they arrange this marriage. So they go down to Timnah and they arrange for him to marry this Philistine girl, a marriage that is based purely on Samson's desires, his lust. It's got no rational basis and no loving basis. This marriage will not last, and indeed by the end of chapter 14 the marriage is over. Now we have this story which is very reminiscent, I must say, of Hercules and the other Herculean figures in various mythologies. He sees a lion in the vineyards of Timnah. Don't forget, in those days there were lions in Israel. There were lions all the way up to the Balkans. There were also lions in the entire greater Middle East. There were lions in Persia. There were lions in India. There were lions in Africa. Nowadays, of course, lions sadly are restricted to East Africa and Southern Africa. There's a tiny colony of lions in North Africa in the Atlas Mountains. There's a tiny colony of lions in Gujarat in India in a national park, but that's it. But once upon a time, these big cats were everywhere, including in the vineyards in Timnah. He meets the lion, he lays hold of the lion, and he kills it with his bare hands. What a man! What a hero! What a great guy! By the standards of the day, clearly. But nowadays, people who go around killing lions, generally speaking, not approved of. The Maasai in Kenya, it used to be the custom, when lions were much more plentiful, that a man proved his manhood by killing a lion. Not necessarily, I think, with his bare hands. Not sure if the Maasai still do that. There are not enough lions left for the Maasai to kill them when they come to manhood. But it's a sign of his enormous manhood that he is able to kill a lion. The Lion King roaring towards him. Then the Spirit of the Lord seized on him, and he tore the lion to pieces with his bare hands, as though it were a kid, a baby goat. And he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. And then he went down to the woman, and then he went back and he married her. And then he went out of his way to look at the carcass of the lion, and there's a swarm of bees living in the rotting lion, and he eats the honey as he walks along. And then at the marriage feast, because this is a rather odd sort of marriage, the woman lives there, and he just goes and sees her as and when he feels like it. This sort of marriage does exist in Africa nowadays, again amongst people like the Maasai. He goes in and says, he sets this riddle Again, very mythological this. There's in ancient northern mythology, there is this idea of the riddle setting, if you remember, which is dramatized for us by Wagner in, I think, the third part of the Ring cycle, Siegfried, actually. And there is quite a parallel between Siegfried, the mighty warrior, and Samson, the mighty warrior. Siegfried also is undone by a woman, and Siegfried also is a mighty warrior, not the brightest of people, certainly not the sharpest tool in the box. And he comes out with this riddle, and none of the wedding guests can get the riddle. It goes on for 7 days, and of course the wife cajoles him into giving out the riddle. Now, so Samson has got a weakness, and his weakness is he can't stand up to female nagging. And this is a serious weakness because, as we'll see, this will eventually bring about his downfall. Every man has a weakness. Every man, however strong he is, has a weakness. What's your weakness? Do you know? Well, sometimes, yeah, we do know, but we don't want to know. We try and push it away. But we've all got our weakness. We all have to admit it. That's why we go to confession. And when we go to confession, we admit that we have a weakness, and we say what it is, and we say how it's guided our life or whatever in the last time since we went to confession. For most human beings, the great weakness is pride. But for certain people in the Bible, and this also happens with King Solomon, who was the sharpest tool in the box, a very wise man, he also had a weakness, which was his foreign wives. His heart went after strange gods because of the foreign women he married. Now, this Samson, clearly the story of Samson, is quite possible that it was written down at the time of King Solomon as a way of providing an ironic commentary on the great king. In other words, it's a folk tale about a real person which has been embroidered as in order to deliver a snide, sideways in commentary on the present ruler. And indeed, talking about present rulers, we do know, don't we, that there are some rulers who have got weaknesses for the fair sex and who show very poor judgment in their dealing with women. And those are male rulers. We also know that there are certain rulers who go to enormous lengths to keep their shenanigans out of the newspapers because they don't want to look weak. And we do know, for example, that certain other rulers are quite happy for everybody to know how many wives and mistresses they have, because they live in a sort of country where this is greatly admired. I'm thinking of Silvio Berlusconi, and I'm also thinking of Jacob Zuma, and I'm also thinking of the King of Swaziland. All of these had a huge harem of people, and this was a way of showing off their wonderful manly qualities, although we as Christians should absolutely not admire this. Now, similarly with Samson, his wayward sexuality seems to be admirable in this context, except he gives it so it's not admirable. In other words, it's a warning to us all against the weakness of the flesh. And then, of course, he retorted, if you've not ploughed my heifer, you would never have solved my riddle. The heifer is the wife. So he speaks rather slightingly of the wife, who is nameless, and he flies into a rage. The Spirit of the Lord comes down upon him. And of course, the author wants to make out that all Samson's desires, all Samson's feelings are due to the Spirit of the Lord, because he's the Lord's chosen instrument, as we'll see. And he went down to Ashkelon. He killed 30 men there. Yeah, that's what you do, isn't it? Yeah, I'm just nipping down to Ashkelon and I go have a little massacre. And he brings back their clothing and he gives those to the people who've won the riddle, who've won the bet. So, okay, he lost the bet, but the people in Ashkelon who he murdered, they pay for it. And then, burning with rage, he went back to his father's house. And then his wife was given away by her family to the best man. In other words, the marriage lasted 1 week. Pretty bad. And also very bad news for the 30 men of Ashkelon, which is, of course, a Philistine city, who've been murdered by this enraged boy. I mean, this is appalling. Samson is not just riddled with lust for a Philistine woman, and also weak when it comes to Philistine women. I think we've established that. And easily cajoled by a Philistine woman. But also he just goes off and murders 30 people just like that. No respect for human life. So Samson, as I said earlier, is a monster. Am I right? Yeah, I think I am. He's an absolute monster. All the best now. That was chapter 14. Bye.